About a week ago, just over a week ago, I was driving my car, I don't remember where I was going, and I had the radio on, and this person was talking about the statistics that are, some things about America that are a little bit disturbing. They said, do you know right now we have more drugs to medicate people for mental illness than we've ever had in the history of the world? I mean, we have more antidepressants, anti-anxiety medicine. I mean, we're just constantly kicking out new ones. And they said on top of all the medication, and more people medicated than ever before, on top of that, we also have more counselors and more access to counseling than we've ever had in the history of the world. And despite those two facts, they said, the suicide rate continues to climb. We can give them more medication, we can give them more counseling, and yet despite those two things, the suicide rate in America continues to climb, and the person on the radio said, maybe it's an issue of meaning or purpose in life. That got me thinking when I heard that, and I thought that was really profound. A while ago, I read a quote from a very famous psychologist. He said, clinics are crowded with people suffering from a new kind of neurosis, a sense of total and ultimate meaninglessness of life. And from his perspective, this is what's going on. It's like people are wondering how to answer the question of why am I alive? And when they can't come up with a good answer to that, we either make up our own, like, what am I going to choose? Well, I'm going to choose anything. Or we choose something that's not satisfying, or we just give up in despair and people take their life every day. So, what's life about? What do you believe? I believe specifically that we are created by a being of pure love, a God, who put us here on earth to fulfill some purpose. Not to just take up space, but to actually have a purpose that we fulfill in this world. And I love talking about this. And so what I want to do in this series that we're in right now is I want to use this movie to talk to you about your purpose in life. You ever seen this movie? It's been out, I couldn't believe it's been out for 29 years. 29 years ago it came out. Now I really feel old. I can't believe it's been out for 29 years. For those of you who aren't familiar with the movie, it's about Bill Murray, who's the weatherman. He's a weatherman at this big TV station in Pittsburgh, and his name is Phil, and he's really egocentric, totally about himself all the time. For those who haven't seen this, it's amazing. It's just a great story. And one of the things he hates doing every year is every year for Groundhog Day, he gets sent out to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, for the Groundhog Day celebration to let this little rat, as he calls it, determine the weather forecast for the next 6 weeks. So he doesn't like it. He hates it going. He hates going every year. He hates the small town. He hates the people there. He hates every part of this. He thinks it's below him. And so after this is over, he records the weather. He and his producer, who came along with him, and the camera guy, they get back in their van. They're going back to Pittsburgh, and they hit a blizzard, and they can't go back home. And so they have to go back to anyway, back to that place. Yeah, it's harder to say, right? So it goes back to Punxsutawney, and he thinks, well, there's nothing I can do. I might as well just go to bed. And so he goes to bed, and if you know the movie, you know what happens. The next morning, 6 o'clock, he wakes up, and it's exactly the same Sonny and Cher song that he woke up to the day before. And he wakes up, and he thinks, well, they're playing the same tape, and he goes outside, and there's no snow, and everybody's talking about Groundhog Day. And magically, he's back on Groundhog Day again. And every single night he goes to sleep, he wakes up to that. At 6 o'clock, the same Sonny and Cher song, the same news recording. It's Groundhog Day every single day. Matter of fact, somebody calculated this. Are you surprised? I laughed when I read this. Somebody calculated that, because he learns all these things later in the movie, they calculated that he lived the exact same day for 8 years. 8 years, over and over again, the exact same day, every single day. Now, the movie is hilarious, but it has so many deep, actual things that it can teach us. I'm really excited to show you this because many people in America, especially during COVID, didn't you feel like we lived in Groundhog Day every day? It's like, oh my goodness, every day was the same. And it's like, There are a lot of people in America who woke up this morning and they feel like every day is Groundhog Day. It's exactly the same. Nothing's really different. And that's not what God has for us. I don't believe that at all. I believe that God has a meaning and a purpose for our existence, and we can learn from this movie how to pursue that. So here's what I'm doing in this series called Peniel Goes to the Movies. We're going to talk about this. How do you find your purpose in this world? I want to ask you to open up your program, take out the notes that you'll find inside. If you're watching online, go to our website at penielchurchlife.com, and you can open up and download the notes for free. And this is such an important subject, so I want to ask you to grab your notes, grab a pen, as we jump into this. And I really tweaked some of the words on this. So like number 1 is now this, so it doesn't fit with what you see. So you can like scribble out, understand, because I changed my mind. So this is what I want you to write down. Watch out for false paths to meaning. And America is littered with them. False paths to meaning. There are a lot of people trying to tell you what the meaning of life is all about. And so, Phil is not all that different than many, many Americans. He believes two things. He believes that he's better than pretty much everybody around him. And he also believes that life is all about his personal happiness. Boy, it sounds like we might know a few Americans like that, right? So he believes these two things. And because he believes them, they put him on two paths to what he thinks is what life is all about. The first path is the path of selfishness, right? The path of selfishness. So let's get really clear what we're talking about here. I came across this definition. I really like it. Selfish is defined as being concerned excessively or exclusively with yourself. Seeking or concentrating on one's own advantage, pleasure, or well-being. Look at this last phrase. Without regard for others. You don't think about others. Other people don't matter. It's just about me, either exclusively or excessively, without any regard for other people. Now, if you've watched the movie, you know this fits him perfectly. He doesn't care about anybody. He only cares about himself. All that matters is him. Matter of fact, this is his producer, Rita, and he really likes her, and he wants to date her. He actually just wants to be with her sexually. That's all he cares about. But she is repulsed by him. She says, "You're egocentric. It's your defining characteristic." Your defining characteristic is your ego. She also says to him, "I can never love someone like you, Phil, because you could never love anybody but yourself." And that's true. If you've seen the movie, you know all he loves is himself. He doesn't love the people around him. He uses people and loves himself. Over and over again in this movie, he is rude and demeaning to all the people he encounters, whether it's Rita, his producer, Larry, the camera guy, the hotel lady that runs the bed and breakfast where he stays, the guests at the hotel. He ignores a homeless beggar on the street. He insults the people of the town. He says they're hicks and morons. I mean, he's just got this horrible, selfish attitude, and he brings it through life. Now, it was interesting when I was thinking about this. This is a path, right? This is a path in America, selfishness. I was reading a book a while ago. And again, what's selfishness? It's concerned excessively with myself without regard for others. And a survey was done of 18 to 25-year-olds, and they said, what are the top life priorities for you? 90% of all 18 to 25-year-olds said, the number one priority in my life is money. I want wealth. I want to be wealthy. And my number 2 priority in life, which surprised me a little bit, I want to be famous. Because you see people getting famous now for ridiculous things, right? I mean, just ridiculous. I can't even keep up with all the apps that my kids are on. It's like where they can watch 7 seconds of something, and it's like, hey, did you see that guy? And they know the guy by what he did or the gal by what she did. It's like fame. It's like it's these lures. And when they asked these 18 to 25-year-olds, all right, well, what about objectives like helping people in need? Or being a leader in your community, or becoming more spiritual, those things have no traction. It's like, well, that's kind of nice, but who cares? I want to be rich, and I want to be famous. That's what they want. It's the world we live in, right? It constantly says those are the things that are really important. If only you could be rich and famous, then life would have meaning and you'd be happy. So he pursues it. That's not the only path he pursues. He pursues Again, selfishness is without regard for others. He doesn't care about others. The other thing he pursues is something called hedonism, which is really a fun word to say, but very few people know what it means, but it is a problem in America. So hedonism is simple to understand. It's the pursuit of pleasure. But it's more than that. It's not just about pleasure. Its pleasure is the highest good and proper aim of human life. That's what hedonism really is. It's not just that, well, I want pleasure in my life. It's that the only thing that matters is gaining pleasure in my life. And so if you've seen the movie, you know what Phil does. Once he realizes he's immortal, that every day he's going to wake up and everything he did the day before won't matter, he starts living for pleasure. He does whatever he wants to do because he knows the next day the clock is going to turn back over and no police will be after him. And so he robs this armored car and he buys everything he wants to buy and he eats whatever he wants to eat because he knows the next day it won't matter. Whatever he's done, it's going to be gone. It'll all start over again. It's just pure hedonism. It's like, what will bring me pleasure now? That's what I'm going to do. He manipulates women into having sex with him. And so it's like all of this is about pleasure, pleasure, pleasure. He just pursues it completely. Now, sometimes, I know there people who would be listening, if they could hear me talking about this, they'd be like, oh, there goes another Christian talking about pleasure, and it's like, oh, it's bad. It's like, I am not saying pleasure is bad. I'm saying the pursuit of pleasure above everything else is destructive, but I am not saying pleasure is bad. One of the things that dawned on me as I was prepping this message for the first time in my life, I never thought about this. Did you know that pleasure was God's idea? Did you know that? He made us with a brain that responds positively to pleasurable things. So that when I eat chocolate, my brain just unleashes the happy chemicals in my mind. Literally yesterday I was driving somewhere and I needed to stop and get supper. So I stopped at Quick Trip and I got some chicken tenders and some fried. They got this really good thing. And then there were donuts on sale. And they had like the Long John chocolate donuts filled with cream, which are like, and it was like $1. It's like you don't even think about $1. So I bought them. I haven't eaten the chicken yet. I literally ate all the chocolate off the donuts, ate the cream out of the donuts, threw the cake away, and felt pleasure. So all of us have things that make us, now some of you that sounds awful, right? So, but for some, all of us have things in our lives that they trigger the pleasure centers of our brain. We're like, ooh, I love that, right? This is awesome. This is awesome. God made us that way. Pleasure's not a problem. Pleasure's not a sin. God made us to be human beings who experience pleasure. By the way, we're created in his image, which, by the way, means that he also feels pleasure. And certain things make him feel pleasure, which we will get to. The problem isn't pleasure. The problem is that we look for pleasure exclusively in temporary things. I mean, there's so much being written about the shopping. We don't even know what we've ordered, and all of a sudden we got Amazon packages, and like every day is Christmas because we don't even remember what we ordered. We are so crazy. It's like more. Sex is, just listen to the radio. On the way home, listen to any radio station you want, and you will hear that the highest pleasure is sex, right? That's what you just need. You just need sex. If you just have lots and lots of sex, everything will be great. Or money, or fame, or drugs, or alcohol. You see all these false pleasures, these things that take us away from the real pleasure. And it's interesting. We're trying to find pleasure in temporary things. There was a man who was at the time, he was the wealthiest man on the planet, the wisest man on the planet, and he wrote about this in the Bible, in a book called Ecclesiastes. He said, I denied myself nothing that my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. Everything was meaningless. Chasing after the wind. So he did this already. couple thousand years ago, Solomon, the wealthiest man who could do anything he wanted. If he wanted it, he could do it. He was the king and rich. So anything he wanted, he had power and money, he did. He said, I thought of it. If I thought it would give me pleasure, I did it. And he said, you know what the outcome of that was? Meaninglessness. Isn't that what we're struggling with in America right now? That's what we're dealing with. Everything feels meaningless. Every day feels like Groundhog Day. I wake up, I do the same thing, I go to bed. I wake up, I do the same thing, I go to bed. And he says, it's like chasing after the wind. Do you ever think about that phrase? I mean, think about chasing after the wind. If I had a volunteer to go outside right now and chase the wind and don't come back till you caught it, right? You're never coming back. But that describes us in America right now. Chase the wind. And the problem isn't pleasure. I really want to drive that point home. It's not pleasure. The problem is that those other earthly pursuits of pleasure keep us from the greatest source of pleasure. Do you know what the greatest source of pleasure in this world is? That phrase makes no sense to 99.9% of all human beings. But the greatest source of pleasure in this world is not an object. It's the Creator. Some of you know nothing about that. Because you're like, well, I don't find a lot of pleasure in going to church. Is church on that screen anywhere? It's not about church. It is about you connecting deeply to God. He is the greatest source of pleasure in this world. Nobody is condemned in the Bible for pursuing pleasure. What they're condemned in the Bible for is pursuing a pleasure lesser than the greatest pleasure of all, God. But this is the path that we're on in America. And the problem is this. The problem isn't, if I asked you to think about, do you know anyone selfish in your life today? Can't you think of somebody? Right? Do you know somebody who's pursuing pleasure alone? Yeah, can't you think of anyone? This isn't the problem. The problem are there selfish people living for pleasure out there? The problem is, and the only question I want you thinking about is, have those two values started to infiltrate my life in some way? That's the only thing that matters. Not what are they doing. And when I look at myself, then all of a sudden I get a little concerned, because flip your notes over and look on the back and look at just some of these questions. I put a few of the ones that really zinged me this last week up here on this slide. Am I selfish? Have these values started to get into my life? Look at this. Anyone in the room easily offended? It's often a sign of selfishness, because after all, it is all about me. And if you don't do what I like, then I'm offended by that. Do I have a never enough mindset? Do I find myself always wanting the next? Do I see that in me? Am I living with few meaningful friends? It's not necessarily an indication of selfishness, but it often is. Do you practice genuine gratitude? And I don't mean, can you sit right now and with your head think of 5 things you're grateful for? It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, does your heart overflow each morning when you think about all that you have to be grateful for? Not your head, here. In a world where there are so many people who will starve to death today, are you sincerely grateful for what you have? And then the biggest question that I have been thinking about all week long, do I believe the greatest pleasure I could ever have in this world will be found in God? Do you believe that? We don't. In America, we don't. But there are consequences for that. And that brings me to the second thing. You have to understand where those false paths lead you. And I'm just going to touch on this and just give you that point basically. But this is where the movie just illustrates it perfectly. If you let yourself get distracted from God and you pursue selfishness or pleasure and they become your little gods, they become the focus of your life, then the movie is for you. And you'll see where he goes is where you are going to go. Because he goes down this path where he just gives in to whatever he wants. Every single day, it's about him all the time. And he gets to the point of complete frustration. Matter of fact, he gets to the point of despair because nothing has any meaning. Every day's the same. So then he starts taking his life in the movie. Every day. He just kills himself in different ways over and over and over and over again. And guess what happens? Doesn't matter. The next day, 6 o'clock rolls around. The alarm goes off. He wakes up to Sonny and Cher. And nothing matters. Nothing matters. And he reaches this point of despair and hopelessness and wants to end his own life. I hate to say that, but doesn't that sound like some nation that we know? Right? Jim Carrey once said, I think everybody should get rich and famous and do everything they've ever dreamed of so they can see it's not the answer. See, the problem is we're not rich enough to really realize how true that is. We just think if I had a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more, then I would be content and satisfied, as if these things could ever bring me the pleasure in my soul that my soul longs for. They can't. I read about a man, he posted online, he's a hedonist. He doesn't even deny it. He said, I'm a hedonist, I crave pleasure. Whether it's through food, travel, or sex, it doesn't matter. I'm always looking for the next new experience. He said, chasing my next high, which in the end makes me feel depressed after I've accomplished whatever it is I've been craving. He said, it's quite pathetic. It doesn't even feel like I'm living. I feel like a zombie trying to enjoy themselves all the time and going through the motions of work. The future looks extremely foggy. It's just like Solomon said 2,000 years ago. I denied myself no pleasure, and you know what I found was at the end of that path? Meaninglessness. Meaningless. It's meaningless. It's just chasing the wind. As Jesus is so clear, the purpose of our life is not us. By the way, did you know this? The average celebrity who has it all, money and fame, everything that's so important, 4 times as likely to take their own life. 4 times as likely. It's meaningless. Jesus said, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. You must take up your cross and follow me. Because if you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. Look at that phrase. You must give up your own way. How easy is that for you? My soul fights this harder than anything in my life. I like to be in control. And God is saying constantly, Jesus is saying, you want to follow me, you got to let go of that control. So here's what this means. Number 3, I have to learn how to say yes to God's purposes. Not my purposes, his. I have to say yes to God's purposes. Now, in the movie, since it's not a Christian movie, God doesn't really appear. So I'm adding God, because here's what I think for us who follow Jesus, this means. I have to realize that God created me for himself. It's the first thing. God created me for himself. You know what that means? Do you know what that sentence means? He wanted you. He wanted you in this world. That he actually created me to be his friend. He wants a relationship with me more than he wants anything else. Did you know that the Bible says that he delights in you? He delights in you. He wants me to get to know him personally, and this is what he longs for. Remember I said that since we're created in the image of God, he has things that bring him pleasure. You know what brings him pleasure? You. You bring him pleasure. You choosing in your day to spend 5 minutes, even turning your attention to him, brings him enormous pleasure. Do you know, how many of you have people in your life? I mean, if I ask you this, who do you love spending time with the most? When you think about somebody you like, maybe it's somebody that isn't even here anymore. It's like, oh my goodness, one of the people, I've got a list, my grandson Lincoln. Oh my goodness. Give me Lincoln time. He just turned 1. or any of my grandkids, Brian, Lainey, Lincoln, I'm just like, oh my goodness, just let me have some time with them. And it's just like happiness, right? Do you know that that is the smallest taste of how God feels whenever you and I decide to turn to him? The smallest taste. He simply waits every moment of every day for you and I to turn to him. Because you matter more to him than anything. And he wants that relationship with you because he wants to give you what your heart is longing for so much. Look at what it says. The psalmist said, you show me the path of life, and in your presence there's fullness of joy. In your right hand are, look at that, look at these phrases. How many Americans really think that the greatest joy they could ever experience is in the presence of God, the relationship with God? How many people actually think that there are pleasures forevermore in a relationship with God? We don't believe it. And yet the greatest source of pleasure in this world is God. Some discover that, some don't. He won't force himself on us. I struggle with this, I'll be honest with you, I struggle with this more than anything in my life, more than anything, because I am easily distracted. I feel so easily distracted. Early in the year, like in January, February, I was having 2 of the best months spiritually. There are times when I feel so close to God that it feels like you can hear his voice. It feels like he's just carrying you along. And the work is easy and everything's easy. And then that one about January, February. And then all of a sudden something happened toward the end of March that really just threw me. And all of a sudden it was like this carrot dangled in front of me. And I was like, carrot, chocolate donut dangled in front of me. And it's like, oh yeah, that's the direction. And I took my eyes off of what was really important, him and this time with him, and I moved him to the back of the bus, and I made these other pursuits my top priority. And nothing went right. I do this all the time. That's why messages like this are really, sometimes, like I say, this one's just for me. And you're all here listening to what I'm saying to myself. Because I get distracted like everybody else. So one of the things that I put in my prayer journal is these 2 sentences, and I try and pray this every day to God. God, I say to him, you're the real treasure of this world. And if you offered me everything I want, or the opportunity to know you personally, I'll choose you. Because I remember that he is the true source of pleasure in this world. Not everything I want. Think about everything you want, right? Think about everything I want. You know what I'd want? I want a great career, satisfying career. I want to be able to be a scratch golfer. I want to be able to eat all the chocolate I want without ever gaining an ounce and never work out again. I want a lot of things. So literally anything you want in one hand or knowing him personally in the other. Which do you choose? You know when life works? When you let go of all this other stuff and you say, I was created for you. Pleasure is the fullness of joy. Pleasure forevermore is found in you. You're what I want. I was created for you. I want you more than I want anything in this world. And when you have that as your perspective, life works. So do I actually believe the greatest pleasure I could have in life would be found in God? You got to sort that out yourself. I know what those other paths lead to because I've chased them. I've chased career success, even in the world of church. I mean, it sounds silly to say, but 99% of all churches in America will never break 1,000. Did you know that? 1% of all churches in America, in the world, will ever break 1,000. And I was a pastor of a church that broke 1,000. And do you know the emotion I felt that Sunday when we broke 1,000 in attendance? You know the emotion I felt? Disappointment. Emptiness. Discontent. If you let yourself get distracted and chase and put that in the top spot, that's your future. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about because it's how you feel today. You've chased and you've gotten it. You got the raise, you got the job, you got the girl or the guy, and all of a sudden you're like, wait, this is it? We were created for him. And life only works, like Jesus said, when we give up our way and make him number one. And then the second thing, I'm going to have you jump down to letter C, is when we begin to pursue our purpose on this world through serving. Because this is why we're here. I'm here to make him the relationship the priority and serving the priority. And this is what the movie shows so perfectly. If you haven't seen the movie, there's a turning point in the movie where he's lived for himself, and it's all emptiness, and he's miserable, he wants to die. And so finally, this transition happens in his life where he's like, you know what? I'm going to pay attention to what's happening around me. I'm going to start serving others. And all of a sudden, he starts serving others. Instead of walking by the homeless guy who's standing on the street begging for money, he takes him in the restaurant, and he feeds him, and he takes care of him. And then he finds out that this kid falls out of a tree and gets hurt. And so he goes to the place where the kid's climbing the tree and catches him every day to make sure the kid doesn't get hurt. And the kid never thanks him, ever. But he just keeps doing it. And then on he goes from there. There's a man choking in the restaurant, and so he goes in the restaurant and he does the Heimlich and saves that guy. He brings coffee to Rita and Larry, his producer and camera guy. He starts greeting the people in the hotel with a friendly greeting. He changes the tire for some elderly women when they blow a tire on the road before they even know what's happening, because he knows, because he lives every day the same day. He knows what happens all over the town. So he just makes his whole life about serving, the whole thing. And it changes not just the lives of all the people around him, it changes his life. By the way, it was the key to his freedom. The irony of that. The irony of that. The key to our freedom is found in serving and being like Jesus. And it really comes, as he begins to see what's going on in what are the people that need, or what do they need around me, and then he begins to care about them. And when he does that, it just changes his life. I remember years ago reading an article that said, you want to be like Jesus? Then here's what you need to understand. He said, you need to get to the point where you're willing to say, God, interrupt me. In my day-to-day and what I have to do today, I want you to interrupt me. And he said, did you ever notice how much of Jesus' serving in the world was interruptions? You ever notice that? He's walking along, he's going somewhere, and all of a sudden 2 blind men are sitting by the side of the road, and they cry out, David, son of David, have mercy on me. And it says Jesus stopped. He stopped what he was going to do, letting go of his way to serve them. He's teaching in a room, and all of a sudden these people bring in a paralyzed man. Well, they bring him down through the roof. And it says Jesus stopped. So much of Jesus' ministry and serving was just interruptions. You really want to partner with God in this world, here's the prayer to pray. Would you write that on your notes? Some of you are going to write it down, but you are going to have a hard time praying it, right? Because you have your plans and your schedules, and God is saying, Jesus said, give up your own way. Would you pray that silently while you're just sitting here? God, interrupt me today. Just interrupt me today. And then keep your eyes open and see who in need you're going to encounter. It may be driving home. You see someone with a flat tire on the side of the road. It may be that you're in a store and you see somebody trying to buy something and you can see they don't have enough to pay for it. It could be anything. But we do what Jesus did. We see and we care and we serve. This is what God uses in this world to change the world. You ever heard of this guy? The guy in red? I know we don't have a picture of his face, and that's on purpose. He really likes his anonymity. His name is, all he's ever called is the Secret Santa. You hear about this guy? He's been doing it for years. Somewhere in the Midwest is a millionaire, and years ago, he decided that God had given him so much he wanted to help others and give away others. He's given away millions of dollars, and he does it around the holidays. He will simply go up to strangers and give them a $100 bill, and sometimes multiple $100 bills. And he could be anywhere. One day, there was a man in Kansas City named Thomas Coates. He's 33 years old, and he was a heroin addict. He was so addicted that he literally sold his son's toys to buy drugs. His girlfriend was so frustrated with him one day, she said, I know you don't believe in God, but why don't you just ask for his help? And so Thomas, at 33 and addicted to heroin, had thought, I have nothing else to do. And so he bowed his head and he prayed. He said he prayed for the first time since he was a child. It was a simple, desperate prayer with very little faith that God would do anything. Later that day, he was sitting at a bus station. And Secret Santa happened to walk in at that moment and saw Thomas just sitting there, and he walked over and he pulled out 2 $100 bills and he gave it to him. Tom looked up in shock and he said, I didn't earn this. And the stranger said, well, you deserve it. You're a good man, I can tell. And Tom hadn't heard those words like that since he was a little boy from his mom. And then the stranger patted him on the back and said, see ya, pal, and off he went just that quick. Tom, until that day, had always called himself an atheist. But he said the timing of the prayer and that stranger's generosity were too much to dismiss, and with tears flowing, he said, it's just amazing. That was a miracle. It was like God was saying to me, do you believe me now? So Tom checked into a treatment center and he said, this is the first time he's ever going to be doing it with God at the center of his life. This is how God works. You want to see the purpose that you have? People get so weirded out about this. It's like, oh, I can't pursue God's purpose in my life. I'll have to quit my job and sell my house and move to Africa and live in a hut. And it's like, what? Stop. How about if you just say, God, interrupt me today. Interrupt me today with the one person that you want me to bring some kindness into their life. Now, the truth is, you could be sitting next to them right now. You could be sitting next to them right now. Your family, every day, there's opportunities for kindness with them, right? Every day. Just pray that prayer. This is how we find meaning in this world. We remember that the greatest source of joy is in God, and we put him first. And then we just say, you show me what you want me to do today. Interrupt me in some way, and I will join you and show kindness to that person. And live for something beyond ourselves. So for those of you who follow Jesus, a couple of questions. How easy is it for you to do this? This is that verse that I quoted earlier from Matthew 16:24. Jesus said, give up your own way. I've struggled with that one. Just being honest with you, I struggle with that one. You really need to think about the answer to this question. Am I trying to find pleasure apart from God? And are you willing to pray that prayer today? God, please interrupt me. Let me have you bow your heads as we finish today. Now, if you're a follower of Jesus, this is a perfect time for you to just have an honest conversation with him. For some of you, the honest thing is, Jesus, I struggle with this. I want my way, but I want meaning in this world more. So interrupt me. I really want to learn how to put you in the top spot and keep you there. Some of you, when I talk about this idea of God being in relationship, it seems so foreign to you because all you know is religion, which is about doing things for God. That's not what I'm talking about. Everything was done by Jesus for us. The reason Jesus was in this world 2,000 years ago was to serve us. The Bible says that God so desperately wants a relationship with us that he sent his son Jesus into the world to pay for the things that are wrong inside of us, the unloving things we've done that keep us away from God. And Jesus rose again, and if you will let him, Jesus will forgive you, and he'll put you in a new relationship with his Father. And if you want that right now with your head bowed, you can say something like this. Say, Jesus, I'm turning to you today. Please forgive me. I want a real relationship with you starting today, not religion. I'm just asking for you. In Jesus' name, amen. Now, as we finish up, I always ask every week if you'd get the little card out, and if you're a regular attender, just put your name down, let us know you were here. But maybe you prayed and asked for his gift of forgiveness or renewed your commitment. Let us know about that, and we'll send you some follow-up material in the mail, or if you have a prayer request. Some of you have some big things that you're carrying in here today, and you want some prayer, just put it down. We have a team of people that will pray for you, and then just drop it in one of the 2 offering boxes back on the doors. Don't forget, there are 6 meals left in the freezer in the back. Some of you have people on your mind today that are in need. So don't ignore that. Go get a meal and go deliver it to them as an act of kindness. Okay? Let God interrupt your day. Thanks so much for coming. Hope to see you again next week.